Hey guys, welcome back to the Ad Lib podcast. As you can tell, well, I had a bit of an injury today, unfortunately, during football. Had a bit of a clash, and being the taller guy, I hit my cheek. Unfortunate, but it's stuff that happens. But still here on the Ad Lib podcast. Unfortunately, today, Franco and Joe cannot join us for different reasons. Very unfortunate for both their sakes. I wish they were here, of course, but we've still got lots to talk about to start off. Obviously going to start off with an introduction, talking a little bit about a few series I've been watching, and there are quite a few. I've got a whole list here. I've got The Sympathizer, I'll update you on that. We've got Franklin, we've got Sugar, we've got X-Men 97, and a new show it started this week on Apple TV Plus called Dark Matter, which you might have heard of the books. Books are quite popular, and I'll be reviewing the first couple of episodes as well. Then I'll get into the movies I've watched in the past week or so. Of course, last week we did not have the podcast because I was abroad. We did put up review by Joe. That was a review for The Fall Guy, and I'll talk a little bit about The Fall Guy in the introduction as well. Apart from that, then we'll obviously get into the trailers. We've got actually only one trailer to talk about today. It's one I'm actually quite excited to talk about. A Quiet Place Day One releasing its full trailer, and that will definitely be an interesting movie to talk about. After that, we've got the news. We've got some box office news. Been a while since we had a look at the box office, and looking forward to having a look at that box office news. We've got news also about Fantastic Four, the new Fantastic Four, which should come out in 2025. Casting news. We've got a couple of casting choices in, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the possibility for a Shogun Season 2. For fans of Shogun, rejoice or not, because I know a lot of fans have been a little mixed, have had a bit of mixed reactions to this, but we might be getting a Shogun Season 2. The Bear. The Bear is another series I'm very much looking forward to, and we've got some news there as well. Then finally, with regard to movie news, we've got a new Lord of the Rings movie. Now, hopefully it won't follow the route that the Rings of Power went with Amazon, but it is a new Lord of the Rings movie, and we'll talk about that. And the name of the movie is Hunt for Gollum. And we'll talk about the story possibilities, which characters will appear, so on and so forth there. Then we've got some gaming news as well, because unfortunately in the past couple of weeks, Microsoft have been in the news, not for good reasons, unfortunately, because they've been closing down quite a few studios, and we'll talk about that as well. And with that, then we'll get into the reviews. I'll start off with a review for The Maestro, which is the great Jonathan Backman's short. It's available on YouTube. I shared it on my Facebook profile and on the Ad Lib podcast Facebook page. You can check it out there. And I'll give a bit of a review about it, talk a bit about what I liked and what I did not like. Mostly liked, to be honest. Unfortunately, Joe was going to review La Chimera and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and he will not join us. However, you can still check out Joe's thoughts on these two movies by checking out his YouTube channel. So Joe has been on the podcast. Joe has been on the podcast for basically since its inception, and you can now check out his thoughts on his YouTube channel. I'm going to bring up his channel right now on the screen, and there we go. So this is Joe's YouTube channel, and you can check out his thoughts on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and La Chimera right here, if you're curious to hear what Joe thinks about these two movies. Unfortunately, he won't be here for the podcast today, but like I said, check out his thoughts on these two movies on his YouTube channel. And with that, I also have one other review. I'll be reviewing a Guy Ritchie movie, which didn't release in the cinemas, weirdly. Not in Malta, not in England, and nowhere except for the US, apparently. But it did become available on digital this weekend, and that is the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, starring Henry Cavill, Alan Richardson, and quite an interesting cast there, Isaac Gonzalez, and so on and so forth. I'll talk about that movie in the review section of the podcast. And that is the plan we have for today. Viewers and listeners, hope you are well. Keep me... Oh, hello, Bruce. How's it going, my friend? Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for an Easy Profit. Ooh, harsh thoughts. We'll get into that later on, Bruce. We'll see. I'll let you know what I think about that in a little bit. But let's get into it. Viewers and listeners in the chat, let me know what you have been up to, because now I'm going to tell you what I have been up to. Let me know what you've been up to. Sorry there, brought up my own video. Here, hate listening to my own voice. Let me know what you've been up to in the chat below. Let me know what you've been watching, what you've been doing. Obviously, Bruce, I got to watch all of his shorts. This week was a very, very, very fun event, a really good time, and honestly, I have to say I enjoyed all of his shorts. Son of God being the highlight, Son of God being very much the highlight. I think that's one of the best shorts I've seen recently, to be perfectly honest, but really had a good time watching all of his shorts. It was actually, Bruce, I was actually really impressed. What was the name of the short you did, Bruce, for your master's course? I was actually really impressed with the dialogue in that. Very well written short. Well done, Astra. I was really, really impressed by that. So yeah, good stuff there. If you haven't checked out, I don't know if Bruce will be posting all of his shorts somewhere, or whether they're just going to be like somewhere lost in on the internet. So Bruce, if you're going to be sharing them or posting them somewhere, let me know so I can share them as well with my friends. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of the podcast, and I will start off with a few shows I've been watching recently, like I said in the beginning. And the first show I would like to talk about is one of my personal favorites. I'm going to start off with my favorite show I'm watching right now, which is The Sympathizer. Yeah, it was a real pleasure, Bruce. It was a real pleasure getting to watch all your shorts. A really good time. And I hope the money will help you get Son of God. Yeah, and her voice. Yeah, that was really good. I was really impressed. And it's a short film made for a master's, and damn, better than most of the shit I get to see on television. But this is good. This is good. The Sympathizer, very, very good. Obviously created by Park Chan-wook, one of my all-time favorite directors. And we're now at episodes. So I've watched episode 4 and 5 recently. And it honestly, episode 4 was one of the best episodes I've watched this year. It's a great showcase of Park Chan-wook's love for cinema and creation of cinema, because basically we get to see the captain, who is obviously our protagonist. The description is, as a reluctant consultant on a Hollywood film, the captain navigates the egos and personalities of an increasingly chaotic production. Basically, they're making a Vietnam War movie, and the captain, who is the protagonist, he is a consultant, basically, and he's advising on how to bring a voice to the Vietnamese characters. And it's interesting to see all the racism that comes out, and how all the American directors and producers basically do not see the Vietnamese as actual people. They just see them as cannon fodder for the American heroes to kill. And it's great to see the protagonist, our protagonist, obviously the captain, trying to bring a voice to the Vietnamese characters. It's a great watch, honestly. Fantastic camera work. You know, Park Chan-wook is going to give you fantastic camera work. Great dialogues, absolutely fantastic show. I highly recommend checking out The Sympathizer. That's show number 1 I want to talk about. Second show I've been watching is an Apple TV show. By the way, The Sympathizer is available on HBO Max. Second show I've been watching is an Apple TV Plus show. Not as good as Sympathizer. Its production values are insane. Really impressive camera work, really impressive costumes, set pieces are great. So good stuff overall, but the story is very slow. It's a very slow story going on here with Franklin. So would I recommend Franklin? I think I would if you're a big fan of these period pieces, but be prepared for a very slow pace. Very slow pace. It's basically at episode 8 now. I'm not sure how many more episodes we've got. Oh, sorry, we're at episode 7 and we've got the last episode next week. There are a lot of plot points to tie up in episode 8. I'm guessing this is going to be an hour and a half, definitely. The one thing I want to say about Franklin before I move on, the unfortunate thing about Franklin is that there's a big focus on Temple, who is Benjamin Franklin's grandson, and unfortunately Temple just is not that much of an interesting character, right? Temple is not that much of an interesting character. Not to say that Noah Jupe is giving a poor performance, far from it. It's just that, you've got Michael Douglas as Benjamin Franklin. You just want to see him, right? And that's the reality of it. But still, I would recommend it if you're a fan of period pieces. Next up, another Apple TV Plus show, which has dipped very much in the last episode. Very unfortunate, because I had been having a really good time watching this one. I would have recommended this to everyone. Sugar, which is a great, I unfortunately have to use the past tense, was a great noir show. Lots of references to great Hollywood classics. But there was a really weird twist. I'm not going to spoil it, of course, but there was a really weird twist in episodes 6 and 7. And it's unfortunate, really unfortunate, because up to that point, I thought the plots and the storyline was decent, nothing to write home about. Colin Farrell was giving an amazing performance. Unfortunately, it's just the twist just did not work for me. It goes into this weird sci-fi plot line, which I'm actually honestly trying to completely ignore. Trying to forget the whole sci-fi plotline, just focusing on the whole noir aspect of this show, which I think is really good. So it's a big pity. Now, for fans of Marvel and the MCU, probably the best thing Marvel has done in the past 6, 7, 8 years is this show right here, X-Men 97, which apparently is going to have 11 episodes. If you're a fan of Marvel, if you're a fan of the X-Men and you're not watching this show, you are doing yourself a disservice, because X-Men 97 is, I'll repeat, one of the best things Marvel has created in the past 6, 7, 8 years. Fantastic animation, great style. The music is fan-fucking-tastic. The Newton brothers have created a bloody great soundtrack here. Bloody great score. And honestly, the series just keeps upping the stakes episode by episode. I thought it couldn't get better after the 5th episode. If you remember my review for the 5th episode was fantastic. But episodes 8 and 9 were out of this world good. And we're reaching the climax of the whole show, and you can really tell it's a fantastic show. Fantastic show. Check out X-Men 97. And to conclude, a new show, also on Apple TV Plus. Apple TV Plus creating some real bangers, to be honest, is Dark Matter. Dark Matter is a show on Apple TV Plus. Same thing like I've said about any Apple TV Plus show. Great production design. Apparently, I've not read the books. Hello, Richard. I'm going to finish Fallout, then get to Sugar. Fallout was great, Richard. I loved Fallout. I really had a good time. I'm a big fan of the video games, and I checked out those, and I love the video games. So I love the fact that they went for basically the exact same aesthetics of Fallout, same tone, that, kind of like tongue-in-cheek tone, with still very serious themes going on. So I love the Fallout show. I had a really good time with it. Sugar, like I said, Richard, there is a weird twist. I won't say anything, of course, which I did not like. I'll be curious to hear what other people think about that twist, because it's a weird one. I'll give it this. I did not see it coming. I definitely did not see it coming. But I did not like the twist at all. But back to Dark Matter. This is an Apple TV Plus show. It's based on a series of books. Apparently, I think there's like a trilogy of books. Quite popular books, apparently. And it's an Apple TV Plus show. Very good production design. Really good production design. From what I have read, apparently it has stuck very closely to the book. So fans of the book will enjoy that. To be honest, 2 episodes have come out this week. It's a rather slow-paced start, but I get why they're building up the tension, they're building up the characters. There's a pair of fantastic lead performers. We've got Joel Edgerton and obviously Connolly in the lead roles. Jennifer Connelly, two great actors who are the leads in the show, and they are great. The chemistry between them is fantastic. Would I recommend this? I think I would so far. I'm curious to see where this is going. The whole sci-fi going back into time, multiverse aspect of it all is fascinating. I think they're doing it in a much more interesting fashion than something like Marvel has been doing. It feels consequential. It doesn't feel like with the Marvel multiverse where, oh, we'll bring him back and we'll bring that character back. No, it actually feels the opposite, where every action you take has serious consequences. And we see one of those consequences at the end of episode 2, which really piqued my interest. So we'll see how the plot develops, and I'll keep you updated, of course, on my thoughts on Dark Matter in the following episode. So those are the shows I've been watching. Honestly, I would say, apart from Sugar, which I was loving, I would have said Sugar was probably my favorite up to the twist in episode 7. Apart from Sugar, I'm enjoying pretty much every one of those shows. So all very watchable shows. I would recommend watching all of them, depending obviously on which of the genres you like. Keith, I've watched the second season of the anthology series Them the Scare, and it's really great. Keith, I have not heard about that. Them the Scare. Them the Scare. Anthology series, Them the Scare. I think it's this one, right? I would assume it's this one. I have not heard about this. Who's starring in it? Deborah Arind, Ashley Thomas. Not too familiar with the cast, with the actors here. Is it what genre is this? I know I can check on IMDb, to be honest. What genre is this? It's a horror series with varying characters and locations by season, featuring different aspects of the horror genre. Ooh, interesting. This is on Amazon. Okay. I think this is definitely worth a watch, Keith. I'll definitely try and check it out. As you can tell, I've got quite a few shows going on right now. So once I finish one or two of these shows, I'll try and check out them. But I do love me a good horror show, definitely. With regard to movies, I've watched quite a few. I won't go into detail, but I'll just bring them up on the screen. La Dolce Vita, got to watch a couple of Fellinis the past week. Really good time. I gave this a 5 out of 5, to be honest. La Dolce Vita, such a bloody great movie. I think it probably would say this is probably Fellini, my personal Fellini favorite. Really good movie. Ty West directed an episode in season 2. Oh, damn, okay. Now you've really piqued my interest, Kate. But yeah, La Dolce Vita, some bloody fantastic movie. I don't think there's much to say about it here. I was in Rome, and fortunately for myself, actually got to attend an event in Rome. There was Matteo Garrone in I've got the paper here, in La Casa del Cinema, which is a cinema basically you can find in Villa Borghese, which is just outside, well, basically in the entrance to Villa Borghese. And I got to go into to the cinema. And basically what happened was they asked a few popular directors, to choose a number of movies. Now, I got to watch, wait, this isn't Otto Mezzo. There we go. So I went to see Matteo Garrone's choice, and we actually got to see Matteo Garrone there in the cinema. There was an interviewer basically asked Garrone questions about his choices. He also chose a Jean Vigo movie, L'Atalante, which I still have not watched, one on my watch list. So there was L'Atalante prior to Federico Fellini's 8.5, and then there was obviously this 8.5. And Matteo Garrone spoke a little bit about why he chose Jean Vigo's L'Atalante and Federico Fellini's 8 Mezzo. Actually spoke a bit more about Federico Fellini's 8 Mezzo. Seems obviously he's Matteo Garrone. He had he had more knowledge about the creation of this movie and what was going on in Fellini's mind as he was creating this movie. And then he got into a little bit about his experiences of making Io Capitano. If you haven't watched Io Capitano, by the way, fantastic movie, nominated for Best International Feature at the Oscars. Definitely check it out. And he spoke a little bit about the main actor as well, about his love for football and how he had interviews and met so many big celebrities, Morgan Freeman and Joaquin Phoenix. And the guy just, I forgot the name of the actor. I'll find him here. But the main actor, Seydou Sarr, the main actor had no idea. It's funny. Main actor had no idea who Joaquin Phoenix is, who Morgan Freeman is. But a funny story from Matteo Garrone. When Seydou Sarr actually met a football player, and apparently Seydou Sarr is not a Juventus supporter. But when the guy saw Chiellini, he was like, "Oh my God, it's Chiellini!" So he's a big football fan. Apparently, he's going to have a trial with Lecce. Apparently, so it'll be interesting to see if he manages to make it in football after this. He seems not to want to pursue acting as a career, but I think that's a pity because he was really good in Io Capitano, really good, surprisingly really good. But after the interview with Matteo Garrone, we obviously got to watch Fellini's Ottomezzo, which I personally gave a 4.5. To be honest, cinematography-wise, editing-wise, the composition, the beautiful black and white is an absolute masterpiece. I think I need to watch more Fellini to get Ottomezzo. I missed out. I'm quite sure I missed out on quite a few of his teams. I was also exhausted, and I think if anyone in the chat has watched Ottomezzo, you'll know that it's not a good idea to watch Ottomezzo when you're exhausted. Basically, I'd spent the whole day traveling around Rome, and we didn't even take a break. We went straight to the cinema without a break. In fact, in the video, you can see me with the tracksuit I was wearing throughout the whole day. So I'll definitely be watching a few more Fellinis in the coming weeks, and then we'll do a rewatch of Ottomezzo and see how I perceive the themes tackled in Ottomezzo, and see if I get the movie better. But still a bloody fantastic movie. Bruce saying rewatched Before Midnight last night. Excellent as ever. Have you been watching the Before Midnight movies? I know it's a trilogy. I know I've watched one of them. I haven't definitely not watched all three. I know I've watched the most popular one. It's the one which is most highly rated on Letterboxd. Bruce forgot which one it was. But I've only watched one of those. Excellent as ever, of course. I know the whole trilogy is really good. After that, I got to watch another really good movie with my mum this time, Mulholland Drive, talking about complex movies. Holy shit. Bruce, by the way, remember, I had told you I had not watched Mulholland Drive. I finally watched it. Absolutely loved it. I adore this movie. I probably on a rewatch, I'll start considering putting this in my top 10, possibly top 5 movies of all time, because this movie hit me in ways movies rarely hit me, to be honest with you. It's a fantastic watch. My personal interpretation of Mulholland Drive is that it's a movie which is tackling kind of like sexual assault and the way the female actress is forced to go onto the casting couch, basically, to be able to make it in Hollywood, which is, I think, a theme that David Lynch was very brave to tackle, right? Very brave to tackle back in 2001, and has become obviously even more relevant now post Me Too period. Oh shit, probably one of the most mind-blowing film experience I've ever had. Same here. Me and my mom were like, oh my God, what's going on? We were both like really reacting, really confused, but really positive as well. I was a bit confused at the start of the movie, Bruce. I was a bit confused at the start. I'm like, why is it so cheesy? Why is the dialogue so cheesy? But obviously, once I'm trying to talk about it without giving too many spoilers, of course. I'm sure not everyone has watched Mulholland Drive, although it is a 2001 movie. But I mean, I watched it last week, so and I live and breathe movies, so Obviously, everyone has his own time. But as I was saying, it's a movie that starts off a little weirdly, very cheesy dialogue, very bright, almost extremely bright. I'm like, what's going on with the camera work? What's going on with the contrast here? But obviously, there's a purpose for it. There's a whole storyline for it. The whole dream or not a dream, right? Trying to not, again, I'm giving a few spoilers here, sorry. But a real mind-blowing experience, like Bruce said. Absolute 5 out of 5. Upon rewatch, like I said, this is probably going to make it into my top 10 lists of all time, possibly my top 5. I love David Lynch. I'm currently trying to watch quite a few David Lynches. Next on my list is probably Eraserhead, which is another one of David Lynch's, which I have not checked out. It probably will be the next one on my list, Eraserhead. Definitely looks like an experience. And then I've watched a few more contemporary movies. I got to watch The Fall Guy, which Joe posted a review for on the channel, just to give a few thoughts on The Fall Guy. Honestly, I had a really good time. I watched this with a workmate, with Ethan. We had a really good time watching this in the cinema. These two leads, Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, absolutely kill it as a director and the stuntman. There, obviously, the developing relationship going on there between them. Mulholland Drive, probably the film I was most scared while watching. Scared? Interesting. Bruce, I wouldn't say I was scared watching it. There are some moments where I was like, oh, shit, okay. But I wouldn't say I was really that scared watching it. Thinking about it, I'm more like, oh, shit, okay. But I wouldn't say I was scared watching it. I don't think I was scared. But this is a David Leitch movie, so, there's going to be lots of stunts, lots of action. And, it is a readaptation of the classic Fall Guy show, right? We'll talk about the box office for The Fall Guy later on when we get into the box office. But to give a short review about the movie, honestly, I had a decent time watching it. I think it's a really fun action movie. Some very good stunt work. Gosling and Emily Blunt are fantastic at their absolute charismatic best. I think the humor is really good in this. I haven't laughed this much in ages and ages. Honestly, this is the kind of movie I really wish we could get more of. Honestly, this is the kind of movie that I think we really need more of. Disappointed by the box office results. Like I said, we'll get into that later on. Which obviously means that we probably won't be getting too many of these movies. Hollywood is in a really weird position right now with movies like The Fall Guy, where you've got a budget of... The Fall Guy is, I believe, over 100 million budget, which is an issue, right? Which is an issue because it's not going to make its money back. That's the reality. So Hollywood is in a really weird position right now, where these mid to high budget movies, unless they are part of a big franchise, simply won't make their money back. And I'm scared these kinds of movies will not continue to be made. That is a big fear I have, because The Fall Guy is a fantastic movie. It's fun. It's not a Mulholland Drive, obviously. It's a 3.5 out of 5 in my opinion, but it's still a really fun watch. Really fun watch. And with that, moving on to another movie I've watched, which is an okay-ish, I'd say. Okay-ish. My expectations were really high for this. Joe had reviewed it, had given it a 4 out of 5. And here I'm talking about Abigail. Did not have the greatest time with Abigail. I thought tonally there's some weird stuff going on. This is available on digital, so you can check it out there. I thought this was going to be a full-blown horror. Maybe that's my expectations going into it. And maybe that's my issue, my problem going into it. But unfortunately, Abigail just didn't work for me. The tone is my issue with this movie. It starts off like a classic horror movie, right? In a one-location horror movie. And when the movie focuses on the gore and focuses on the blood, it does it really well. I think the gore and blood in this is great, really good. Unfortunately, what happens is that there is a lot of comedy here, and the comedy is just not funny. It just didn't work for me. Maybe it's just just me, it just did not work on me. But the comedy, all the bloody winks and witty comments just made me eye roll so much. Honestly, sometimes made me want to gouge my eyes out. That's what I said on my Letterboxd review. And the issue, apart from being the tone, is I think the whole screenplay, right? Some of the dialogue is very cringy, very, very cringy. Lots of exposition in the opening 30 minutes, which is an issue, which is a big, big problem. And it really takes a long time to get going. This movie should not be 1 hour, 49 minutes. I think a movie like this should be, like I said in my Letterboxd review, should be not longer than 90 minutes. Pacing is an issue. It takes too much time to get going. And once it gets going, the blood and gore is fun, great to watch. I just needed more. I just needed much, 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 much more. And with that, I'll conclude with one last movie I watched. Got to watch this yesterday with my girlfriend. And that is X-Men Days of Future Past. As viewers and listeners of the Ad Lib podcast will know, I've been checking out some X-Men movies recently. And I got the Blu-ray for Days of Future Past. Did not love this as much as First Class. I think First Class had much more, how would I put it, much more kind of like style and pizzazz. And that is obviously a Matthew Vaughn at his very best. Still a fun movie. I gave this a 3 out of 5. Yeah, it's a decent watch. It's a serious X-Men movie. Good character work, just lacked a little bit in the style department. Finally, then I'll be reviewing later on. This will be in the review section of the podcast. We're talking about the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and that review will be later on in the podcast. That will be in the review section. So, viewers and listeners in the chat, if you have not done so already, don't forget to leave a like, and we'll now get into the one and only trailer of the day. But before that, I'm going to take a quick sip of my water. And actually, I'm going to go close the door. All right, so let's get into the basically one and only trailer of the day we have. And that trailer is one I'm very, very, very interested to watch when it comes out in theaters on June 28th. I'm pretty confident this will come out in Malta, to be honest. But here we're talking about A Quiet Place Day One, making sure my is not falling off. We're talking about A Quiet Place Day One, which is obviously a prequel of the first two Quiet Place Day One movies. And Paramount Pictures has been, according to Collider, keeping a lot of footage of it under wraps, revealing only one trailer and a short teaser a couple of months back. Today, however, the studio finally released a new full-length trailer for the prequel that stars Lupita Nyong'o as one of the people that tries to survive the alien invasion that resulted in 2018's A Quiet Place, slated, of course, like I've said, for June 28th. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of A Quiet Place Day One is obviously that we will see a different approach to the franchise, right? Since this is a prequel, we will actually get to see society at its, we'll see society crash down. Basically, no one has any idea that these deadly aliens are guided by sounds. And so it will take some time, obviously, for people to find out that it's sound that attracts the attention of these aliens. And that will be a fascinating watch. I hope they do that and do that well. It will be a pity if we miss out on that. Apart from that, obviously, the other difference in this movie is that it will be a different filmmaker. This is directed by Michael Sarnowski, who you might have heard of from Pig, which is Nicolas Cage movie. Pig was very close to making my top 10 of that year. I forgot which year Pig came out. Let me just check really quickly. Pig was a 2021 film. Yeah, Pig was very close to making my top 10 of that year. I loved Pig. We really had a good time with Pig. Thought it was very well directed and great performance by Nicolas Cage. So that is definitely an interesting point to talk about. John Krasinski, who obviously directed the first two and starred in the first Quiet Place. John Krasinski is sitting this one out. He is the producer. The cast also features Stranger Things Joseph Quinn, and we've also got Jimon Hunsu and Alex Wolff, who we recently saw in Oppenheimer. And that is A Quiet Place Day One. Me personally, I had a very good time watching the first Quiet Place. I still, shame on me, have not checked out the second Quiet Place. I definitely have to do that prior to checking out A Quiet Place Day One. We'll definitely need to check that out with Tricia, because we watched the first one together and we had a blast. So those are my thoughts on A Quiet Place Day One. Definitely looking forward to this one. Check out the trailer. Obviously, you'll know that we cannot, unfortunately, show the trailer on our YouTube channel. But it is a very, very, very good trailer. Great tension. The silence, which then explodes into alien action, is fantastically portrayed. I'm pretty confident this is going to be a good movie. Pretty confident about it. So those are my thoughts on A Quiet Place Day One. And with that, guys, we'll move on into the box office news, because we've got some news about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and a few other movies we've been talking about recently. And let's get into that. So, Wes Ball's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes brought some much-needed heat to the early summer box office, which has been under a bit of a shock, and we'll get into why that is the case later on, which has been in a bit of a shock because, obviously, of The Fall Guy. But Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes brought in quite a lot of money early summer box office with a domestic debut of $56.5 million in the US and $72.5 million overseas, with a global start of $129 million. Now, if these numbers hold, that will mean it will be the second best launch of the series in North America, which is actually quite impressive considering it's been a few years now since the last, I think it's War of the Planet of the Apes was the last Planet of the Apes movie. And that, so some very, very positive news for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and Wes Ball, who I think is a very good director. I still, unfortunately, have not checked out Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'll be watching it this week. Looking forward to that. But obviously I'll give my thoughts next week on the podcast. But I've been a big fan of pretty much all the Planet of the Apes movies. Confession, we spoke about this, I think, last week or the week before. But confession, I actually watched the 2001 Planet of the Apes movie, I would say 10, 12, 13, 14 times on Canal Plus. They used to show it on Canal Plus like every day at the same time at 3. It would start at 3, so it was the exact time I would arrive home after school. And I would always switch on the television and check out the 2001 Planet of the Apes movie. Personally, I loved it. I remember loving the Planet of the Apes movie. I'm scared to watch it now because I think I'm going to hate it. I'm really scared to check it out now. Bruce McAlvino selling us great time for Monkey movies. Yeah, Monkey Man. Have you checked out, Bruce? Have you checked out Monkey Man, by the way? I'm curious to see what you think about it. It's a very well edited movie, that one, Bruce. Dev Patel giving a bloody gritty performance if I've ever seen one. Some of the camera work, some of the shaky cam was sometimes a little off, but there's reasons for it. I've always been a bigger fan of the, wide shot action, similar to what we get in something like, oh no, I'm praising John Wick to Bruce. But yeah, I prefer that kind of action where the shot is clear and I don't like the in-your-face action that much. I think I've talked about this quite a few times. Although, to be fair, I am contradicting myself a little bit because I am also quite a big fan of the Bourne series. So, yeah. If it works, it works. Anyways, back to the box office. So, good news for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Now, to talk about The Fall Guy, Universal's The Fall Guy, which was the first film of summer 2024 at the box office. And that movie left nerves frayed across Hollywood after opening to a very disappointing $27.7 million over the May 5th to May 7th frame. Obviously, everyone thought that was going to make much more. But I think the issue here is that post Barbie with Ryan Gosling and post Oppenheimer with Emily Blunt, everyone forgot that Gosling and Blunt have never been big pulls at the box office, right? Gosling has been a star of quite a few big disappointments. One of the biggest I could think of is obviously Blade Runner 2049, which was a fantastic movie, but absolutely bombed at the box office. So Gosling and Blunt have never been big pulls at the box office. They are amazing actors, two of my current favorite actors plying their trade in Hollywood, but still not great pulls at the box office, unfortunately. And yeah, the Fall Guy this week places second domestically with an estimated $13.7 million, tumbling 51% for a 10-day total of $49.7 million, which will be a disappointment for Universal because I'm sure they were expecting at least a decline of less than 50%. Moving on to number 3, Challengers, which we reviewed a couple of weeks ago, last episode, which was a couple of weeks ago. Challengers, which holds its number 3 in its third week, dipped and narrowed 38%, was estimated $4.7 million for a domestic total of $38.4 million through Sunday. In the foreign box office, it grossed $4.2 million for an accumulation of $68.7 million globally. I think that is a decent amount for Challengers. That is. Oh, I want to talk a little bit about Civil War. So we had this discussion on the chat, on the Ad Lib podcast chat, and unfortunately, Joe and Franco aren't here to talk about what we discussed. But long story short, so we were talking a little bit about Civil War and if it's a disappointment at the box office right now. Civil War has reached $104 million worldwide during its fourth week in theaters. That makes it the second A24 movie to ever cross the $100 million milestone, behind, obviously, 2022 Best Picture winner Everything Everywhere All at Once, which made $143.4 million total. Now, it is also the 10th movie this year to reach the $100 million, surpassing $100.3 million gross of Madam Web. Oh shit, Civil War beating Madam Web. That's an achievement. Now, the question is, will it turn a profit? And it's a yes or no. We're not sure. Now, obviously, the usual thing you need to do with movies is look at the production costs, which in this case was 50 million, and to break even, you have to double it, right? But that's not always the case, because sometimes costs for advertising and whatnot go up, sometimes costs for advertising are lower. There have been some controversies with Civil War in the case of them using AI-generated posters to advertise and to publicize their movie. So maybe there was some cost cutting over there, which could mean that there were less, that they have to make less than 100 million to break even, basically. So it's an interesting thing to see whether Civil War does break even or not. The simple answer is we don't know. Unless a producer at A24 comes out to tell us, we won't know. But I think it's a decent amount for Alex Garland. Alex Garland has never been a big friend of the box office. Richard Starkey, sadly, for a film to make 1 billion plus Holy Grail, a film needs to court controversy. I mean, to be honest with you, Richard, I don't think any of these movies were actually ever going to make, honestly, I think 100 million for Civil War is quite decent. I would have expected at least 100 million for The Fall Guy. I think that's a big disappointment. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is not going to make 1 billion. No way. But I think if Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes makes 500, 600 million, that will be a big success for them. I think that will be a big success. I think if it hits the 500 million, they'll be very, very happy with that. Obviously, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes being a movie which costs a lot of money with all the CGI involved. So it does need, hopefully it does break even, because I love the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movies. With regard to the 1 billion plus, I mean, did Barbie have a big controversy? And it did make 1 billion. I wouldn't say Barbie had too much controversy. Oppenheimer didn't make 1 billion, very close to 1 billion. And again, I don't think Oppenheimer had too much controversy apart from the whole nudity aspect of it. There was a bit of controversy there, but nothing too big. Obviously, very Twitter stuff. So I can't see where you're coming from, but I would say the last couple of movies to almost make 1 billion or to make 1 billion were just great movies which people love to go watch again and again and again with their friends. Oppenheimer and Barbie, that was a big event, big Hollywood event, the Barbenheimer event. And Hollywood needs, I say Hollywood needs to create these events. Unfortunately, it's not something you can create. Barbenheimer was just a natural phenomenon, just blew social media away, which was great to see, honestly, because if you're a fan of film, you love going to watch films and getting all the hype that there was behind Barbenheimer. That's a great time to be a fan of the cinema. So that's it with regard to the box office, guys. Now I'm going to get into the Fantastic Four casting, which I'm excited to talk about. But before we get into it, viewers and listeners in the chat, don't forget to leave a like. Remember, a like helps support the channel and the podcast so much. Helps the algorithm see that we love the Ad Lib podcast. Bruce, they shouldn't spend so much on movies. 100 million budget for Fall Guys sounds ludicrous. We need more original films, but we can't stay putting them insurmountable bars to succeed. To be honest with you, Bruce, I get why it costs 100 million. Some of the stunts are insane, absolutely insane. Trust me, Bruce. If you've not watched it, some of the stunts are really insane. So I get why it costs so much. At the same time, I admire Civil War, because Civil War is a great-looking movie, and that was made on a 50 million budget, which is really impressive. The thing is, even when it came to something like The Creator, Bruce, The Creator impressed everyone by how a movie like that cost 100 million, but I don't think that movie made 100 million. I don't think it made its money back. So these mid to high budget movies, which are not part of a franchise, simply cannot make their money back. We've seen it again and again and again. And it's a real pity, because it's going to mean that Hollywood producers in the future are not going to be making these mid to high budget movies anymore, unless they're part of a big franchise like Marvel, like DC, like the Planet of the Apes movies. Apologies. They're just not going to be made, which is a real pity, because we need these new movies. The reality is, like Bruce said, they need to be made on a shoestring budget, nothing more than a 50 million, because very few of them are actually going to reach 100 million, let alone 200 million. Because if you're paying, if the production costs for a movie are 100 million, many of these movies, there's no bloody way they're ever going to reach 200 million, which is a real pity, because we need independent, we need fresh, new movies, and unfortunately, we're just not getting them. So, moving on to talking about franchises, Fantastic Four. But to be fair, this news actually has very much piqued my interest, because we've got a couple of interesting casting choices here. Galactus will be one of the antagonists in the Fantastic Four movie, and it's going to be one of my favorite actors. Galactus is a cosmic entity who gains strength by consuming planets. While plot details for the Fantastic Four remain slim, it can likely be assumed that Galactus will head to Earth in the film. Character made his on-screen debut in 2004's Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer for 20th Century Fox. But while Galactus normally appears in the comics as a humanoid figure, that film depicted him as a planet-consuming dark cloud. This means the Fantastic Four will likely be the first time that the character is brought to true live action, and it will be none other than Ralph Ineson who will be taking the role of Galactus. Ralph Ineson, with his amazing voice, one of the stars of one of my personal favorite movies of all time, The Witch. Robert Eggers, The Witch. I love Ralph Ineson. I love Ralph Ineson in any role. Richard Starkey, cinemas take half the ticket sales, so the film needs to make 4 times its production budget just to break even. 100 million needs to make 400 million. That's not how I know it, Richard. I've heard from insiders. I've read on Collider. I've read on some other big on the Hollywood Reporter. They need to make double, as far as I know. I know that's. I've always found it weird because, like you say, I know that cinemas take half the ticket sale, so I don't know how that works. But I've always read at least Collider, Hollywood Reporter, and insiders as well. I've watched some insiders on podcasts and on Twitter and so on talking about this stuff, saying that movies generally need to make double the money. If it's 4 times its production budget, then I don't think there was ever any hope that something like Civil War would make a 400 million. No bloody way. No bloody way. Or The Fall Guy, for example. But back to the topic of Fantastic Four casting. We've got, this is the first piece of news we've got, and we've also got another piece of news. Very interestingly, one that I did not see coming is apparently bloody John Malkovich is joining the MCU. I don't get this. I really don't get this. Why is John Malkovich? I mean, I know why. They gave him a bloody good big check. But John Malkovich is joining Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Vanessa Kirby, Bon Mos-Barash in Fantastic Four. And we have no news about what his role is going to be. But yeah, John Malkovich is joining the MCU. Bruce, more $10 to $20 million movies. Please, Duncan Jones. Moon costs around $5 million. You can make incredible films on the budget. I loved Moon. Bruce, I really, really liked Moon. Thought Moon was fantastic. Man, that cost that much? $5 million? That was really impressive. Remember thinking Moon was visually super impressive. Yeah, like you said, incredible film. Yeah, I'm really impressed by that. Really, really impressed. But yeah, John Malkovich is joining the MCU. I don't get where this came from, but apparently that is the case. Now, some interesting news about the Fantastic Four movie. So this is hitting theaters on July 25th, 2025. So it will be coming out next year. Directed by Matt Shakman. Now, if you've heard that name, probably it's because you've watched WandaVision. He was the director on WandaVision, which is good news because WandaVision was bloody great. One of my personal favorite shows over the past few years. We also know that Julia Garner is going to be playing Shalabal, who is a version of the Silver Surfer, not been seen so far in the Fantastic Four movies, only been seen in the comics. And apparently, it's going to set off to open phase 6 of the MCU timeline, which will be interesting to see. It's a 60s movie, so it's going to be a period piece. I'm interested. I think the casting choices for the Fantastic Four so far have been fantastic. I mean, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Vanessa Kirby. I love Vanessa Kirby, Bon Mos-Barash. Of course, looking forward to seeing season 3 of The Bear. This looks great. This looks really great. Talking about The Bear, let's get into it. So, we got news about when season 3 of The Bear is coming out. And for fans of The Bear, rejoice. It's coming out. We got a short little teaser for it. And apparently, The Bear is coming out on June 27. June is going to be an insane month for TV. We've got so much good stuff coming out in the coming month. I mean, if I just had to find the list. Shows coming out. I know that the Game of Thrones, The House of the Dragon is coming out the month. So here's all the shows coming out in June. The Acolyte coming out on June 4th. Season 4 of The Boys debuts on June 13th. HBO's House of the Dragon Season 2 will come out on that same day. The Bear is coming out on June 27. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Three of my favorite shows, The Boys, House of the Dragon, and The Bear. Star Wars The Acolyte, don't know about that. Don't know about Star Wars The Acolyte. We've spoken about that before. Don't know about Star Wars The Acolyte. But good news for fans of the Bears coming out at the end of June, June 27th. I'm excited to see Chef cooking again. Really excited for that. As you know, everyone on the Ad Lib podcast is a massive, massive fan of the Bear and what the creators of the Bear have managed to achieve, the tension, the storytelling, the different characters and different plot lines given to the characters on the Bear. Fantastic stuff. Really great show. Looking forward to watching it on June 27th. Renewal for a show. More FX news. This time we are talking about Shogun. Now, me and Joe have had this discussion before on the podcast. We've spoken about whether we think it's good news or not, but it seems like FX seem to think this is good news because Shogun may be returning for a second season as star and producer Hiroyuki Sanada has signed a deal with FX to return as Lord Yoshi Toranaga in the Japan-set historical epic, as sources have told Variety. Now, the show was originally billed as a limited series, meaning it's one season and done and dusted. But apparently, Variety have found out through sources that FX is considering moving Shogun into the drama categories in this year's Emmy race, which will obviously mean that Shogun will have a second season if that's the case. FX have so far not commented about this. Obviously, season 2 will see the return of Cosmo Jarvis as John Blackthorne, but this is still in the works. Obviously still not official news, so take this with a pinch of salt, guys. But if Variety are reporting this, that means it's probably going to happen, right? If it's Variety reporting this. Me personally, I can see potential for a season 2 of Shogun. I think the unfortunate thing would mean that as a show, I think Shogun had a bloody fantastic ending, really good ending. Ties up all the plot lines it needed to do, ties them up really well. It would be unfortunate if a season 2 came out and it did kind of ruin the quality we saw in season 1. So we'll have to see where this goes. Personally, I can see potential for a season 2 of Shogun. Lots of plot lines can be opened up and explored in season 2. If it was up to me, I would just skip 20, 30 years and go into the actual Shogunate period and explore what life was like post-Shogunate. Something like Harakiri, for example. Harakiri explores life 15 years post the events of Shogun, well, apparently now season 1. So I think that would be an interesting watch. But obviously, I'm not the one making the decisions here. That is FX. So that's the news we had for Shogun. And with that, guys, one little bit of news to talk about, and that is a new Lord of the Rings movie. Can you believe it, guys? We're getting a new Lord of the Rings movie. Bruce started off the podcast with a pretty cynical comment. What was the comment, Bruce? Lord of the Rings, the hunt for an easy profit. So let's get into it. We're getting a new Lord of the Rings movie named The Hunt for Gollum in 2026. And let's get into it. So Warner Brothers will release the first of its new batch of live-action Lord of the Rings films. Apparently, it's going to be 6 films, I've heard. Apparently, it's going to be 6 films, and that is going to be called The Hunt for Gollum, which will focus on Andy Serkis's Gollum. Original The Lord of the Rings trilogy filmmaker Peter Jackson and his partners Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens are producing the movie and will be involved every step of the way, as David Zaslav said during an earnings call Thursday. Project is currently in early stages of script development from writers Walsh and Boyens, who obviously also wrote the script for the 3 Lord of the Rings movies, along with Phoebe Gittins and Arti Papageorgiou, and will explore storylines yet to be told. I believe Phoebe Gittins and Arti Papageorgiou worked on the Rohirrim animated movie. What's the name of the Rise of the Rohirrim? Is that not Rise of the Rohirrim? What's the name of the Rohirrim Oh, The War of the Rohirrim, that's the one. Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, which is the animated movie coming out December 13th. That's going to be an interesting one, starring Miranda Otto, Brian Cox. Man, great cast, great cast. Luke Pasqualino. Yeah, great cast for that one. So news on this caught my attention on Thursday. I heard about the upcoming Hunt for Gollum movie on Thursday, and I gave it a bit of a thought. Now, I did a bit of a delving into the appendices and into the books, right? And most mentioning of the Hunt for Gollum happens in the Fellowship of the Ring, but there's not much. I believe Aragorn spoke a little bit about it in the Fellowship of the Ring, and describes the 7-year job he and Gandalf had to search for Gollum. Gollum obviously was first captured when he was traveling in Mordor, captured by Sauron, and they're tortured to give, as we see in the Fellowship of the Ring, tortured to give the location of the One Ring. And as Gandalf starts to suspect that Bilbo Baggins' ring is the One Ring, the ring obviously he got from Gollum himself in The Hobbit, Gandalf recruits Aragorn, who obviously is a ranger and is described by Gandalf as being the perfect person for the job of hunting and capturing Gollum. Eventually, after an arduous journey and mission, Aragorn does capture Gollum, and upon capturing Gollum, Aragorn describes how this horrible smell and the screaming and how horrible it was to keep hold of Gollum. Eventually, Aragorn describes how he left Gollum with the elves of Mirkwood, and then the story basically ends there. Now, obviously, what happens then in Mirkwood is attacked by orcs, and Gollum gets to escape upon the attack of the orcs or I forgot it was orcs or goblins. Start to forget these details with time. I'm getting old. But anyways, Mirkwood was attacked by forces of the Dark Lord, and Gollum got to escape. Now, which characters will we see in the Hunt for Gollum? Obviously, definitely we're going to see Aragorn and Gandalf. Now, will Viggo Mortensen make a return? He's not on the younger side now. He's definitely not on the younger side. And again, the question of will Ian McKellen be Gandalf? Big question marks there, because they're both not very young either. So it'll be interesting who will portray Aragorn and who will portray Gandalf. We might have a bit of a cameo for Bilbo. Definitely could have a cameo for the Bilbo. Definitely will have to include potential for also Legolas, because Legolas obviously was there when Gollum was delivered. So some big characters will definitely be appearing in the Hunt for Gollum. Now, there is not much material to work with here, right? From the source, from the original source, from the books. There is potential for a movie, but I have a bit of a fear that, a 7-year journey hunting for Gollum could become a little tedious and could become a little boring. So it'll be interesting to see how they tackle this, right? Still long way to go. It'll be interesting to hear the news and then eventually get the trailer. I'm interested. I know Bruce doesn't seem to be too positive about this, but I'm interested. I love me some new Lord of the Rings material. I hated the Rings of Power. Everyone knows on this podcast that I absolutely hated the Rings of Power. I thought it looked worse than a fan movie. Talking about fan movies, apparently Warner Brothers have blocked a fan-made film which was made years and years and years ago. Apparently they blocked a movie, also a fan-made movie, also called The Hunt for Gollum. Apparently it's blocked on YouTube, which is a real pity, man. I really hate these fucking Warner Brothers, man. I really hate all these massive companies which just bully small creators. And apparently they've decided to ban and block this small little fan-made film, The Hunt for Gollum, on YouTube. Very unfortunate, but what can you do? And with that, guys, I will conclude the news, and I will take a really, really, really quick break, guys, before I get into the reviews. I'll be reviewing the Maestro, directed by Jonathan Backman, and I'll be reviewing The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, directed by Guy Ritchie. But I will take a quick break, quick sip of water, and just rest my voice for a little bit. In the meantime, viewers and listeners, like the video. Please like the video. Really helps the algorithm catch its attention and let the algorithm know that you are enjoying the podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, also, please let your friends and family know how much you enjoy the podcast. Tell them if you love cinema, if you love movies, join the Ad Lib podcast every Monday at 8:30. Today I had to start a little bit late because, obviously, because of my stitches, but it is what it is. But please tell your friends and family about the Ad Lib podcast. If they love films, if they love discussing movies, tell them. And if you're ever interested in joining the Ad Lib podcast, joining for an episode or two, please let me know, message me, and I would be happy to have you on. Quick break, guys, and I will be back in a second. All right, and we're back. Hey guys, just a quick break there, and let's get into it. So now, viewers and listeners in the chat, we will be getting into the review section of the podcast. And like I said, I've got a couple of reviews for you. I'll be starting off with the first one, directed by Jonathan Backman. I'm just going to find the link to it. I'm going to go into Jonathan's Facebook page and bring it on from there. If you haven't checked out this film, guys, please make sure you do. I won't be spoiling anything from the movie. I'll just be talking a little bit about the themes tackled in the movie. Yeah, just basic stuff, very basic stuff. And just bring up the first. I'll just bring up the first shot for the Maestro. And yep, that's it. That's the first shot. So, my review for Jonathan Backman's The Maestro. Here we go. So, I found out about this film quite a few weeks ago. Me and Jonathan and his girlfriend were talking a little bit about films and so on, and he let me know that he had directed this short film. I have been unfortunately really busy recently. As you know, last week we didn't even have the podcast, so I actually got to watch it today. Finally found half an hour of free time to check out Jonathan's short, and I feel bad that I haven't watched it before because I had a very good time watching it. So I'm not very good at describing movie plot points for movies, so I'll just describe it. I'll just say what the video says. A seasoned painter struggles to cope with the modern progression of art and its underlying agendas. He voices his concerns to those he trusts, then decides to confront the problem head on, which I think a very succinct way of describing the short. Now, the movie stars Guy Ritchie, Simone Spiteri, Andrew Bonello, and Nicholas Jackman, amongst others. So, what did I think about The Maestro? First of all, I have to say, a great lead performance by Guy Ritchie. I think Guy Ritchie is a fantastic actor. We've seen him in Lutzu, obviously. We've seen him in many shorts. We also saw him in Jonathan's other short. I personally thought Jonathan's short in Richard's comedy shorts show was my personal favorite. That was my personal favorite. If I had to give my personal favorite, I would have given it to Jonathan's short. Last watching it, I thought that the performances overall were great by Nicholas, by Urich, by Cassandra, of course, and so on. I thought the performances were great, and obviously by Mike, good friend Mike. I had a really good time. I had a really good time watching The Maestro. I thought Urich was a great lead. A very complex performance. It's not a simple performance. It's always great. His character is, I wouldn't exactly call his character like a curmudgeon because he's in a relationship with Simone Spiteri's character. But he does have that, like, you know, grumpy, snobbish kind of character to portray here, which is not an easy character to portray because you don't want to make him too grumpy and too unlikable for the viewers, right? At the same time, however, he needs to maintain this snobbish aspect and snobbish look towards art and kind of like how art is taking a different direction to the way he wants it to take. Because obviously that leads us to the themes, which I think Jonathan tackles the themes in this movie fantastically. And I thought his exploration of themes such as true art, is art for art's sake, or is art meant to portray a message, which is, I think, a discussion well worth to be had today in the climate we have right now, not just for art, but for cinema, for books, and so on. Is art for art's sake, or is art with a message also true art, right? That is, I think, a theme which is tackled fantastically in the Maestro. And it's the conflict that is at the center of this movie, and that is faced by Urich's character, which is, what direction will he take? Will he continue to maintain this viewpoint that art is to be made solely for art's sake? And that is where, first of all, we have his girlfriend, Simone Spiteri's character, who I think, again, Simone gives a bloody fantastic take on her character. Really, really, really good performance by Simone. As always, as is to be expected, right? And there's an interesting little discussion there, which I'm going to pass a comment then directly to Jonathan later on. But there's a small little conversation which I wish they could have explored even more, which I thought was really interesting. Art versus cinema. One person coming from the art world and one person coming from the cinema world, right? And you've got two ways of looking at art and cinema, and both of those viewpoints clashing. I wish that clash could have been explored a bit more. I understand time. I understand, obviously, the script cannot be too bloated for a short, but I wanted to get more from that discussion because, again, I think Urich and Simone's performance in that whole conversation was great chemistry as well, really good stuff. Which then leads us to another very, very fascinating conversation, which is the conversation between Urich's character and Nicholas Jackman's character. And that then leads to the theme of what does the artist intend to portray in his work, in contrast to how does the media interpret that artist's work. And Urich's character goes in for a confrontation, as is described, of course, in the plot summary on Jonathan's channel. However, and I won't say more, I don't want to obviously spoil the movie for those of you who have not watched it, the conversation develops in a very fascinating way, right? Nicholas's character, Gregsy, is not, I'll just say this, is not what Urich's character expected. Not at all. I think Nicholas gives one of his best performances I've seen from him recently. Obviously, I've seen Nicholas on a lot of different shorts recently. I think this is one of his best, if not his best performance recently. And it's not a surprise. I mean, I was one of the people, obviously, who decided to give Cassandra the best actress, and that was in Jonathan's short. And I can tell instantly that Jonathan is a great director to work with actors. I mean, it's not a surprise that he brings out such great performances from his actors. I've never been on set with him. I don't know what he does. But whatever you're doing, Jonathan, keep on doing it with your actors. It's fantastic stuff. I think visually, Jonathan is a good director. He has very good eye for a shot. Still, I think there is space for improvement, but I liked most of the camera work here. Pretty simple stuff, but it's not a movie that needed complex camera movements and complex movements. I'll be perfectly honest. Overall, I had a very good time watching The Maestro. As viewers and listeners will know, I'm not the kind of guy to praise something if I don't like it. When we were talking about all the shorts in Richard Starkey's competition, April's Fool competition, there were some I liked, and I said I was disappointed with most of the shorts. And I'm friends with everyone. I'm not the kind of guy who will mince words if I don't like your work. So Jonathan, if you're listening to this, trust me, I'm not saying this because I've got to know you and I've spoken to you and I've obviously spoken to your girlfriend as well. I'm not saying this just to be, nice. If I didn't like your work, I would have said I didn't like your work. And I like the Maestro. I like this a lot. I think this is the kind of shorts. These are the kind of shorts we need in Malta. It brings up very complex teams, very interesting teams with great performances, good cinematography. I'd say cinematography is probably my least favorite aspect of this film. My personal favorite are the teams brought up. I think the teams brought up are very complex and require lots and lots of discussion. I love the journey that Guy Ritchie's character goes, the journey of self-realization that he goes through in his conversation with Simon's character and with Nicholas Jackman, and I loved seeing him rediscover his love for painting and not letting all these heavy ideas weigh him down too much, and he lets loose and lets go. Thanks to his discussions with Grexy and thanks to his discussions with Simon's character, and rediscovers his love for art, for painting. I love the screenplay for this. I think the discussions are mature, are complex, are multifaceted. It's a very well made short, very, very well made short. The screenplay is fantastic. Performances are really, really good. I think I can continue waxing lyrical for ages, but Jonathan, well done. You have made a fantastic short, and I had a really, really good time watching it. Now, one thing I wanted to say, it's a great short, but I think this has potential to be made into a full-blown movie, right? I think there is potential for a 1 hour, 30-minute movie here, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend going through your script and trying to get funding for a full-blown movie, because I think there is lots of potential here. Lots and lots of potential for the topics and themes to be explored a little more. Lots and lots of potential. So obviously I know funding is not easy, especially here in Malta, but I think there is lots and lots of potential for that. So well done, Jonathan, and I look forward to discussing this more with you. Really good stuff, really good stuff. So those are my thoughts on Jonathan Backman's The Maestro. Check it out on his YouTube. He shared it on his Facebook page as well. I believe even Simon and Urich and other obviously people shared it on their Facebooks as well. So definitely you can find it out. I'll actually send the link here in the chat, guys, if you want to check it out. Just sent the link to Jonathan's short there in the chat. Moving on to the last review of the day, which is going to be a pretty simple one, to be honest with you. So this movie, not Heartstopper, this movie, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Trust me, John has been told he needs to make this a feature. Yeah. Definitely, Richard. Definitely. So Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, directed by Guy Ritchie. Now, this came out a couple of weeks ago, I believe, in America, and weirdly enough, did not release anywhere else except for the US. Now, I think this was a massive mistake. Big reason being because box office-wise, this was a disaster, an absolute disaster. Now, it cost around, I believe, 50 million. Oh, the budget was 60 million. And box office, it made $21.1 million. That is an absolute mess, an absolute letdown. So very disappointing there with regard to the box office. And I understand why. I understand why this movie didn't do well. Listen, I didn't hate the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I did not hate it at all. But I think it's a very bland movie from Guy Ritchie, which is a surprise. It's a big surprise because I don't expect to get bland movies out of a director as eclectic, as out there, as interesting as Guy Ritchie. But let's get into it. So, plot summary is the British military recruits a small group of highly skilled soldiers to strike against German forces behind enemy lines during World War II. So the movie has a pretty interesting cast. We've got Henry Cavill, we've got Alan Ritchson, Alex Pettyfer, Isaac Gonzalez, Babs Olusanmokun, sorry for butchering that name, Henry Golding and Rory Kinnear. So some interesting casting choices here. Freddie Fox as Ian Fleming as well. So the casting I think was very good, except I'm sorry for Churchill, but this is probably the worst portrayal of Churchill I've seen this year. Rory Kinnear is a fantastic actor. I'm sorry, he's not made to act as Churchill. I'm sorry about that. But let's get into it. So the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So I thought it was a decent movie. It does its job, right? There's some fun action. You've got a set of let's put it this way, very good looking actors who are killing Nazis in a variety of very interesting, stylish ways. The action is quite competently shot, pretty decent score, and some interesting songs used there. To be honest, the movie more or less flies by interestingly. Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson, no need to convince the girlfriend to watch this one. Trust me, dude, trust me. Alan Ritchson is ripped. He is so ripped. The guy is enormous. Let me see if I can find a screenshot of Alan Ritchson in this. The guy is, look at that guy, man. He is, look at those guns, man. Not the gun, look at those guns. Like, the guy is ripped. And apart from that, it's actually quite good looking as well. So he's actually quite handsome as well. Still my casting choice for future Batman in the DC universe, upcoming DC universe. So yeah, definitely won't take you long to convince your girlfriend to watch this one. But again, like I was saying, the action is quite competently shot. I think it's decently edited as well. But the fact that I'm saying words like competently and decently in a Guy Ritchie movie is a little disappointing. Coming off the really, really fun, I really enjoyed watching The Gentleman. I know there were some grumblings around people not enjoying it in the Prickly Pears group. I really enjoyed The Gentleman. I thought it was a blast. It flew by. And again, the editing and the camera work and really fun stuff. Here, it feels very by the books. Guy Ritchie, very, very by the books. And I really don't expect to say by the books when it's Guy Ritchie directing a film. And that leads to the movie being very forgettable. It lacks that exciting Guy Ritchie style. The dialogue is okay. There is a little bit of that Guy Ritchie biting dialogue, but not enough, just not enough. Which is a real pity, because I expect much, much better from Guy Ritchie, who's made some of my personal favorite movies I'll put it out there, of all time. Guy Ritchie is one of my personal favorite directors of all time. I mean, this guy has made Snatch, he's made The Gentleman, like I've said. He's made really good stuff, really good stuff. Moving on to, what else about? Oh, so the performances. Yes, the performances. Henry Cavill is fun. Ritchson is fun. And they're having a good time making this, clearly having a very good time making this. Most of the cast are having a good time. There's Isaac Gonzalez, who is stunning as well, so a bit for the guys as well. Again, it's definitely not one of Guy Ritchie's strongest efforts. there really isn't much to talk about here. It's an okay watch. Lots of Nazis die. Decent action. Some okay dialogue. Some funny moments. Didn't laugh too much though. Again, it's a Guy Ritchie movie and I'm not laughing. That's a problem, right? That's a problem. Henry Cavill is having a good time. I'll give you that. Henry Cavill is having a very good time in this film. But overall, I'd say I'm quite disappointed by this. Quite disappointed. Very watchable movie. Still a 3 out of 5 for myself. Still a 3 out of 5 for the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. But it's watchable. Nothing more. Could have easily given this a 2.5. I think I had an okay time to give this more than a 2.5, to give this a 3. But could have easily given it a 2.5 as well. But I'll give it a 3 because I still had fun. It flies by. Honestly, it really flies by. It's a good time. It's a decent time. It's 2 hours. Flies by. Lots of action. Lots of killing of Nazis. Nothing more. Nothing less. That's pretty much it. Don't know if anyone here in the chat has checked out Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It came out this weekend on digital. Been out for a few weeks in the US, so maybe you watched it there. But that's it for today, guys. So that was the last review we had for today. Today it was just me. Always tough hosting the podcast on your own, especially when you have this bloody thing on your on your cheekbones. But it is what it is. Hope viewers and listeners in the chat, you had a good time watching or listening to the Ad Lib podcast. I've always have a very good time hosting the podcast as always. As always, please also do leave a like. Do please leave a like. No, but I am interested in seeing it. Like I said, Keith, it's watchable. Nothing more, nothing less. I think it's very watchable. A pair of decent performances. I think, again, Henry Cavill, Alan Ritchson are having a good time, but don't expect peak Guy Ritchie. Let's put it that way. The thing is, I gave The Covenant a 3 out of 5 as well, but I did enjoy The Covenant much more than this. So might have to give this a 2.5 out of 3 rather than a 3. That's the weird thing with ratings, man. That's the weird thing with ratings. I think about something I've reviewed recently from the same director, which was recently, last year, The Covenant. And I had a much better time watching The Covenant than this. At the same time, then The Covenant did have some wonky CGI. So there is that as well. But anyways, guys, I'm going to end the podcast here. I am exhausted. Been a long day. And obviously, that doesn't help either, right? But thank you so much for all the viewers and listeners who joined us. Very, very busy chat today. And that's always a good time, especially when I'm on my own. So thank you so much to all the viewers and listeners for chatting. If you've enjoyed the podcast, last reminder, guys, please do leave a like on the podcast. Now, if you are disappointed that I have not given you a review for Chimera and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes at the end of the podcast, which is going to be any second now after I finish talking about Joe's channel, please make sure to check out Joe's review on Chimera, which is starring Josh O'Connor. Really looking forward to checking this one out. And here is Joe reviewing Chimera on his channel. But you can also check out Joe's review for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. You can check out his review here on his YouTube channel as well. So make sure to go and check out and support Joe's channel as well. Check out his reviews. And with that, guys, I will end the podcast. I will see you guys next week on the Ad Lib podcast. As always, don't forget to leave a like if you did enjoy this podcast. Let me know. I'd love to hear some of people who have watched Jonathan's short as well. Let me know what you thought about it, please, as well. I'm interested to hear what people have been saying about it. I knew nothing. No one told me anything. No one told me whether they liked it or disliked it. I just found out from Richard now that apparently I'm not the first person to tell him to make this feature film. But I had a really good time. Check it out. The link is in the chat. And let me know what you thought about it. And I'd also love to talk about Jonathan to see what he thinks about my comments. With that, I'll end the podcast. Thanks so much for joining, guys. And I'll see you guys next time right here on the Ad Lib podcast.